What's up, everybody? It's Justin again. I'm going to talk to you guys today about the pileated woodpecker. The pileated woodpecker is found across most of the eastern United States. You can find it in urban areas, you can find it in forests, and they're pretty tolerant to human interaction. So you get to see a lot of them, which I love because this is one of my favorite birds in the world, I guess. So yeah, we'll get into it. So the scientific name is Dryocarpus pileatus. I believe that's how you pronounce it. And I'm just glaring at my notes back and forth to make sure I got everything down. But they're a very large woodpecker. They're almost, I believe, if not the largest, they're one of the largest extant species of bird that are in the U.S. There is the ivory-billed woodpecker that is larger. However, they're questionably extant. We don't really know. It's kind of hard to find numbers on them. They're pretty few and far between, conservation-wise. But the pileated woodpeckers, they're in North America, and they're often heard before they're seen because they're extremely loud. They're really big and really loud, which is a great combo, especially if you're a bird. But you can hear them because of their loud calls. They also do something called drumming, where they peck really fast in one spot a lot, and you can hear it from hundreds of yards away, which is pretty cool. And they use that to ward off other birds, tell them where their territory is, but also attract mates. So their physical description, they are all mostly black with white faces and a characteristic red crest, kind of like mine, I guess. But so the males usually show a red stripe. They both show red stripes, but the male's red stripe will go all the way down to the tip of their bill, where the females, it will stop about here in their forehead, like above their eyes. The males also have a red cheek, which the females do not have. And those are pretty much the two easiest ways to tell, but they do look very similar, so it's kind of tough. You can't get a solid look at them. The juveniles look similar, but they have a slightly duller crest, and they have more stripes. They're found across, like I was saying, much of the eastern United States and also in southern Canada. They're also found in the Pacific Northwest in some areas, as well as British Columbia. They prefer large deciduous or mixed forests with a lot of dead trees and large logs because that's where most of their food comes from. And they also enjoy that for nesting. In Florida, they're less common in the south, but they're often, I see them a lot in highly urbanized areas as well as forests when I'm on nature walks and whatnot. Pileated woodpeckers are primarily cavity excavators and ecosystem engineers. The ecosystem really relies on the cavities they make in trees. Other birds like to nest in there. Other insects like to go in there. Squirrels can hide in there. Like, they're very useful for a lot of different species, and it's thanks to the woodpeckers, who kind of basically renovate dead trees into homes for a lot of different native wildlife. They feed heavily on wood-boring insects like carpenter ants, and they're incredibly important for regulating their populations. If pileated woodpeckers were removed from the system, the loss of those cavities and also the loss of that predation would be pretty harmful for about every other species in the area. So we really want to keep them in here. They're super important. Luckily, there's about, I want to say 2 million of them is what I heard. 2 million of them currently. So they are not too much of a worry. They're totally good, which is awesome. Pileated woodpeckers, they're omnivorous, and they get most of their energy from animal prey and some from plant matter. Their diet usually is ants and beetle larvae, which they find in the bark and decayed wood, but they also have fruits, nuts, and berries. Predators of pileatids includes large raptors like hawks, I think osprey even, raccoons, and snakes, which also take their eggs and nestlings. They play a mid-level role in the food web as they're consumers of invertebrates and fruit and prey for larger predators. Pileated woodpeckers are monogamous for life. If their mate is to pass, then they will stay in the same area and attract a new mate to their current nesting site, which is pretty interesting. They're totally monogamous unless there's a pass away situation. They typically excavate a new nesting cavity each year in a dead or decaying tree. Both the female and the male help excavate the nest. However, the males are seen excavating a bit more than the females as they're kind of worried about their eggs and getting all those nutrients. So I'm sure they're probably foraging a lot more. The females help, they help to nest, they help incubate the eggs and feed the young. A typical clutch is about 3 to 5 eggs, and the incubation period is roughly 2 weeks. And fledging occurs several weeks after hatching. Pairs often reuse the same territory year to year. So like some other interesting facts, pileated woodpeckers, they create large rectangular holes when excavating for the carpenter ants, and they're often noticed on standing dead trees or large fallen logs. Over the summer when I was working down in Naples, I saw a lot of this. In the dead trees, there'd be a lot of holes in them, and it was all thanks to the pileateds in the area because it was giving so many other species places to live, thanks to them in these dead trees that were otherwise just kind of there. Their call is loud, slow, laughing, or rollicking series of notes, and sometimes called a wuck or a cool or quell. I'll put those words on the screen because they're kind of tough to pronounce, but they are sometimes confused with the ivory-billed woodpecker, like I was saying, by casual observers. But pileateds are darker and have different facial patterns. Pileateds can also be surprisingly tolerant of human interaction, as I was saying. And they're sometimes seen in large suburban parks and wooded neighborhoods. So that's a little bit about pileated woodpeckers. I hope you guys learned something new, and I will see you guys in the next one. Adios.